The flow from physical page to virtual page is really quite simple. You're familiar with a physical page. We take a measurement, we report the results in KITE or in my Keynote. The innovation with KITE is the idea of having filters which can look at a subset of that content and output it into virtual pages of your own creation. Those virtual pages then are reported in KITE or to my Keynote. At that point, you can alarm, you can do trending, you can do graphs, service level management reports on those virtual pages to focus on the content that matters. Let's jump in and actually create virtual pages. This is a script which goes to a site, visits a couple of pages. I'll grab the page snapshot pane here and move it over into the main area so we can see what this script does. First step goes to the home page. Second page searches for a burrito. Third page zeroes in on this carnitas burrito. Now let's add a virtual page to report back on what's happening in this last page. First thing I want to do is take a look at the performance details and get a sense of what's in this page. So let's take a look at that third action, which is the carnitas burrito. There's a new feature in KITE 3.0 that really helps you visualize what's here to make better decisions about what you would do in those virtual pages. I'm going to right click on any column header here and choose Toggle Group by Area. That creates this area up here. Now I'm going to drag domain up there. So we're grouping by action and then by domain. If I go down here, so I'm looking at that third page now, I can actually see that that third page brings content in from a number of different domains. Maps.google, maps.gstatic, mt.google, some Facebook, and then Dishola, which was the domain we actually went to for the site. So let's just create a virtual page that only displays what's truly coming from dishola.com and doesn't look at the content coming from other locations, from third-party locations. It's pretty simple. We just right-click on the step in question and choose Insert Virtual Action. Let's give it a meaningful name. And I'm going to start it with VP just as a convention so we know this is a virtual page, and say Dishola domain. Okay. And then you'll notice the one thing we have on there is match page elements. Match page elements is the filter which determines which contents from that page, that third step there, do we want to appear in this virtual page. So I'll right click on that and I have some choices for what I can use to determine what's in this page. The most straightforward one is add URL match. And you can either match on by inspecting the entire URL, or you can get more selective and look at just part of it. I want to be sure I'm getting what I'm looking for here, so I'm going to uncheck the whole URL and go in the domain and just type www.dishola.com. And I'm going to uncheck this regular expression because we've got, actually let me make this HTTP. I'm going to uncheck the regular expression because we're putting in an explicit string we're going to match on here. So now I'm ready to go. I've created a virtual page for Dishola domain. I've created a filter, which is this matching the page elements. Only elements which have a URL where the domain is www.dishola.com will come through into this virtual page. So let's go save that and let's play it real quick. Now that we've run the script once, we get a transaction performance summary, and now we see Dishola domain showing up in our various totals. Okay, let's look at what happened here. Let's take a look. I'll go ahead and collapse these first two steps. So there's our physical measurement, the carnitas burrito with all the various domains. I'll collapse that, and here we've got our Dishola domain. So when you're in KITE, we'll actually show you the elements that don't make it through the filter by showing them in gray. So that's these domains that have grayed out entries. And we see the Dishola domain is white, and that last Google Analytics also gray. So in KITE, we show these grayed out ones just so you can help develop your script and understand what it's doing. When the data gets up to my Keynote, this gray stuff never gets there. So all you would see would be these elements here. Now let's take a quick look at the math. So if you look, the Dishola domain was involved in the very beginning and really had something happening pretty much all of the time to the very end of that page. And so if we look at the network times for that page, sure enough, we'll find that the network time of the physical page and the network time of the virtual page is identical, because there was always something going on, and we're basically counting network time from the beginning of action, subtracting any gaps, of which there were none, and then we get the total. If we go over to the download size, though, we can see there's quite a big difference between what was coming from Dishola and what was coming from the total page. So let's get a little more specific and add a new virtual action here and actually say, I'm just kind of curious what comes from the Google domain. So I'm going to come over here and give this guy a name. So here we got what's coming from the Google domains. And then again, I need to right click on the match page elements. I'm going to choose URL match. This time I'm going to use a regular expression. So I'm going to say any character any number of times leading up to Google, followed by any character any number of times, and leave regular expression turned on. And now I'm going to go ahead and save that. Let's run this and see what we get. Okay, well, I'm back. I ran that. Now I've got my Google Domains virtual action, and we can take a look at some of what's going on there. Not a lot of time, not a lot of content, and although down here we can see that the download size is modest. I didn't follow my convention there of starting that with a VP to be easier to read, so I'll do that, fix that real quick. And then there's another thing we want to do, which is we want the math to add up right. Because we're allowing the entire physical page of the Carnitas burrito to go into the total of the transaction, we don't want to add to the total of the transaction with these virtual pages as well. So we come to the match page element of each of these virtual actions and we just say, no, we don't want to report these page results to the transaction. We uncheck that. Now what's going to happen? Let's run it again and see what happens here. Okay, so we ran it after making our changes, and now we can see that we're told that we're excluding these numbers from rolling up to the transaction, and now we've got a pretty good situation here. We know what's coming from Deshola, we know what's coming from Google, but I'm kind of curious, what's coming from somewhere else? Now we could look, if we take a look in here, let's collapse these first two steps, and let's even collapse this guy and say, well, we can see that there's some Google stuff, there's the Deshola. If we go and look at the Google only step, we can see that we've got some Google stuff, and then we've got Google Analytics. Thought there was Facebook in here. There it is. There's Facebook. So it looks like we got Facebook, and we've got this gstatic, which turns out is probably Google as well. Let's pretend gstatic isn't Google, and just say, well, we want to create a virtual action that's going to catch everything that we didn't catch in these first two virtual actions. So I'm going to right-click here and say Add Virtual Action. And then I'm going to do a little shortcut here. I'm just going to go ahead and borrow these guys. I'm going to copy this, paste it here, and I'm going to copy this guy and paste it here. Now what I've done is to actually create, really the same thing I had above, but what we'll do is this next little magic step. We'll come in here and we'll say, I want to invert this so URL not match that. I'll do that for this one too. And there's one other thing we need to do. By default, the logic between these filters is OR, but when you negate, you want to change this to AND. And that is that as you're checking each row, you need to make sure that it's not this and it's not that. Otherwise, rows will sneak through the filter. So let's try that now. I'm going to go ahead and save that, give that a run. We'll be right back. So now we've pretty much got what we wanted here. Now we've got from this Carnitas burrito, we've got a virtual page that gives us the Deshola domain, virtual page for Google domains, and a virtual page for other domains, those that aren't in those first two groups. Let's take a look at what that looks like in the actual waterfall here. So again, there's our first, that's the real physical measurement. Now let's collapse that. Here's the Deshola domain, and we can see that that's indeed only returning rows that were from Deshola. And then here we're going on the Google domains, and we can see that that's returning this, and these, and these, and these. It's returning Google Analytics. And then for this other, we can see that we're getting this gstatic, we're getting Facebook, and that's it. And the statistics kind of give us an idea of what we're going to see in my Keynote as well, is that for the whole page we'll see this this number, and then for the virtual pages we'll actually see what came from each of those subcomponents of the page. And we can get a sense of, well, what's the size? The other domains are sending an awful lot of content down in there. Google's being pretty lean, and if there were errors we would see those as well for page element errors. None of them. It's a very clean page. So that is a really quick look at how you can add virtual pages to an existing script, and I hope you enjoyed it.